أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
ربنا علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا اللهم علما وصلي اللهم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد. Now we're going to start on the oasis of Dhikr. And this oasis, I feel, might take quite a few weeks. And I'd like to remind you that there are a lot of things when we talk about Dhikr. So it's not going to be one aspect of Dhikr. It's going to be following quite a few aspects of Dhikr. But for today, we're going to talk about Dhikra. I started off by letting you listen a little bit to the most common form of Dhikr, which is Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. Some people add, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So it's the oasis of Dhikr, of remembrance, which we're going to start with, inshallah, today. So, as usual, we start with definition. When we open the lexicon of Ibn Faris, which is the one we use, for Dhikr, I counted the words because I was working today with Word, so I was not going slides. So I counted the words. And in the Ta'rif of Ibn Faris, we had 115 words which were defining Dhikr. And I looked at Lisan al-Arab, which is everybody's favorite. Lisan al-Arab was written by or compiled by Ibn Manzur, who lived from 630 to 711 Hijri. His compilation of the definition of Dhikr, which was many hundreds of years after Ibn Faris. Ibn Faris, he died in 1004 of the Common Era, 1004, whereas Ibn Manzur died in 1232. So it's like something like 228 years difference. So during that time, the definition became much more detailed. Why? Because the Arab were far from the language a little bit, and they needed more definitions. So imagine from 115 words of Ibn Faris, how many words do you think are in the definition of Ibn Mandur? You won't believe it. 1,000, almost 1,500 words. You won't believe it. From 100 words, 115 to 1,500 words. It's several pages of definition. So that's why I use Ibn Faris. For anybody who would like to ask me, why do you use Ibn Faris? I use him because of that. It is a concise definition. Okay, so now let's go to the definition. Dhakara it has two basic meanings. One of them is related to the dhakar, which is the male and female, dhakar and untha. It's related to something which is strong. That's why it's related to the dhakar, related to something which is sturdy. And the untha is related to something which is subtle, something which is soft. That's one of the definitions of dhakar. So it has that. And then the next one, which is what we're talking about today, it is the opposite of to forget. It is to remember, remembrance by thought and heart, and remembrance by words. And the opposite of that is to forget. الذكر ما ذكرته بقلبك وأظهرته بلسانك. And that's basically the definition of dhikr. But it has to do with something also being what? Being famous, being honored. And that's why they say, الذكر هو الصيت والثناء. So that's all for the definition. But of course, we're not looking at the definition of books. We're looking at the definition in the Quran. So we have some shuyukh who gave us a definition of dhikr. This is Abu al-Abbas al-Mursi, whose sheikh was Abu al-Hasan al-Shadhali. He said, الذكر الصلاة والذكر قراءة القرآن. So remembrance, communion, prayer is remembrance. Recitation of Quran is remembrance. Praising God is remembrance. At-tasbih, motion and devotion, it's remembrance. And shukr, appreciation, is remembrance. And ta'a, meaning obedience, is remembrance. Actually, what he's trying to say here, as far as I understood, wallahu a'lam, is that remembrance has to do with everything we do in life. Whatever we are doing, we can be doing it while remembering God. And I think, wallahu a'lam, as far as I read today, that this is what is requested of us. This is what is required of us. This is what dhikr is, that we do it all the time. So it's not just about what your lips are saying necessarily. It is what your heart is feeling while you are going about your daily duties. So you could be doing anything and at the same time doing dhikr. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always speaks about أَفَلَا يَتَذَكَّرُونَ, always speaks about the dhikr. And as I said from the definition, as Ibn Faris wrote, that ذَكَرَ خِلَافْ نَسِيَ, meaning ذَكَرَ is the opposite of نَسِيَ, or forgot. So remember, recollect, reminisce, and you are just reflecting on something, but something that happened and you are remembering it. So it's not just reflection, it's reflection on something that happened, and it's a memory ingrained in you. And for us to think, what memory ingrained in us does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want us to remember? That is something we should be asking ourselves. If it's about a memory, which it is, of course, it is about a memory. So if it's about a memory, what memory is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to remember? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Event, let's say. That's our primordial event, which we are asked to keep remembering, to keep in mind, to keep remembering. So today, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about remembrance, retaining the memory of something important. And that is what I consider, wallahu a'lam, because that's what my research helped me consider. But of course, I cannot be sure because it's ghaib, that is the amana, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, which we have undertaken, the amana. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا هِيَ إِلَّا ذِكْرَى لِلْبَشَرِ. What is the dhikra lil-bashar in this ayah, in Surah 74, ayah 31? It's talking about ashab an-nar. It's talking about those of the fire, and that they were guardian angels. وَمَا جَعَلْنَا أَصْحَابَ النَّارِ إِلَّا مَلَائِكَةً. And then at the end of that ayah, وَمَا هِيَ إِلَّا ذِكْرَى لِلْبَشَرِ. So Allahu A'lam, this is talking here about the fire itself being dhikra lil-bashar, being a reminder. But to whom? Listen, to Bashar. So what I'm going to do today is show you who the reminder is for. The fire is a reminder for the Bashar. The Bashar are whom? The Bashar are the mortal humans, not the cognizant humans, not the Nas. Bashar, if you remember, we talked about the Bashar. The Bashar is the human who is not necessarily cognizant. So it's our species, the species of humanity. The dhikra, what we should remember, is the fire. And that's what it's talking to our basic instinct as Bashar. Because Bashar is before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala breathed into them of his ruh. That's the Bashar. So we're speaking here to us in our flesh and blood entity. So the dhikr for the Bashar is the fire. I found that amazing because on our animalistic level, that's what we are afraid of, the fire, on our animalistic basic level, just like any animals. However, that's the dhikr for the Bashar. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about what? Talks about the Quran. And he says, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا ذِكْرَى لِلْعَالَمِينَ. So here we had the dhikr of the Bashar. Now we have something which is ذِكْرَى لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Alameen are the people who have al-ilm. It's alam. Some people say it's like when you say Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, it's all the worlds. But it's the cognizant worlds. Because alam, the root verb of that is alama or alima. It's about knowledge. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that this dhikra is, the Prophet is saying, or the Messenger is saying, I do not ask you for recompense. This is a dhikra for the alameen. So notice how we have just climbed one level from the level of Bashar, and that the fire is our dhikra, to the level of alameen, and that compilation was revealed to you so that you would not feel any kind of unease about it. Only so that you would warn. لِتُنذِرَ بِهِ, use it as a warning to people. Which people? Dhikra. Dhikra to whom? لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So it's a warning to everybody, but it's a dhikra, a reminder to those who have faith and trust. So in that surah, Surah 7, Ayah 2, it's about the Quran being a reminder for people of faith and trust. And we find the same thing in Surah 11, Ayah 120. كُلًّا نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الرُّسُلِ مَا نُثَبِّتْ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ وَجَاءَكَ فِي هَذِهِ الْحَقِّ وَمَوْعِظَةٌ وَذِكْرَى لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So this compilation is also something which would be strengthening you and making you feel secure. And it is the truth and the reality, al-haq. And it is a maw'idah, it is a kind of warning as well as giving good advice to everybody. But it is a dhikra lil mu'mineen. So you notice in those two ayahs which I just mentioned, the dhikra is to the mu'mineen, a reminder. What does that mean? It means that the mu'min is closer to remembering. The nadhir, which is the warning, is to everybody. But to the mu'mineen, it's a reminder. And then again, the maw'idah is to everybody. But to the mu'mineen, it's a reminder. So what does that mean? The mu'min has already shed a layer. So if you want to think of yourself as, of your heart, basically, as having layers upon layers upon layers of distance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So our heart has layers upon layers upon layers of it, over it, of distancing between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As a mu'min now, you have so many layers already removed, if you notice what I mean. So you have first the Bashar, and then you have the Alameen, and then you have here the Mu'mineen. So you've already shed so many layers, and you are much closer to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by being a Mu'mineen. Interesting, because then the ayahs go on. In Surah 21, Ayah 84, talks about Prophet Ayyoub. وَأَيُّوبْ إِذْ نَادَى رَبَّهُ أَنِّي مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرُّ وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. He called upon his Lord, I have been hurt, and you are the Arham al-Rahimin. فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ. We answered his prayer, and we removed his dur, his hurt from him. And we brought him back his family, and rahmatan min indina, it was out of our mercy. وَذِكْرَى لِلْعَابِدِينَ. And it was a dhikra now for the Aabideen, for the worshippers. Why? Why did Allah mention here Ayyub's story as being a dhikra for the Aabideen? We pass through a lot of difficulties. We pass through a lot of pain and a lot of physical pain and physical indignity. Yani Ayyub's affliction was not an affliction with which he could remain dignified. It was an affliction which made him humiliated, which made people not want to come close to him. It was the worst of afflictions on his body. But he was a abid. He was a abid. What's a abid? A worshipper. So Ayyub's story is dhikra, if you see what I mean here, lil-Aabideen. So worshippers who are wholeheartedly worshiping Allah, despite all that they're going through, the affliction, much of it which is in their bodies, and dur is pain and hardship and harm, something which yudurrik, harmful. And he's going through that, and he is a abid. The story of Ayyub, I'm not going to stop at the story of Ayyub because we're not talking about ibadah today. We're talking about the word dhikra. But you can look at it and you can see what he went through. إِنَّ وَجَدْنَاهُ صَابِرًا نِعْمَ الْعَبْدُ إِنَّهُ أَوَّابٌ. We have found him sabiran. So Ayyub is one of those who have been, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself has said that he was sabir. And what he has been afflicted with was unbearable. And that is why we do not believe the story which is attributed to Ayyub, and that he said he's going to hit his wife 100 sticks. We spoke about that earlier. We'll speak about that later, inshallah. No way. He was a abid and he was a sabir. So we just mentioned what? Dhikra lil Bashar. And then we mentioned Dhikra lil Alameen. And then we mentioned Dhikra lil Mu'mineen. And then we mentioned Aabideen. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سورة الزمر Surah 39 Ayah 21 ألم تر أن الله أنزل من السماء ماء فسلكه ينابيع. Do you not see that Allah, that God, had let descend from the sky water which has become springs in the earth, ينابيع في الأرض, ثم يخرج به زرعا مختلفا ألوانه. And then after that comes all those beautiful growths of plants, and each one is different. In alwan is not just color, it's the whole thing is different, kinds. ثم يهيج فتراه مصفرا ثم يجعله حطاما. And then after that, those things decay and go. Nothing remains. إن في ذلك لذكرى. In that is a dhikra. Now, who do you think Allah is mentioning? When He's showing us this story of life, of something appearing from the sky, which is nourishing water, and the springs gushing forth from the earth. Close your eyes and just envision those images that we're talking about. So you have the sky bringing forth the rain, and the rain being gathered in the bowels of this earth, and then springing forth and gushing forth as springs and rivers. And then out of that comes زَرْعًا مُخْتَلِفًا أَلْوَانُهُ, all kinds of plants, all kinds of growth. And then what happens? It grows and becomes quite vibrant and quite bounteous, but then it becomes yellow, and then it becomes dry, and then it dies and goes, and it's not there anymore. That is dhikra for whom? لأولي الألباب. إن في ذلك لذكرى لأولي الألباب. Those of you who have been with us for a while, you will remember ulul albab. We spoke about them. These are the ones of lub, of love, of the original meaning of love, which we spoke about, which is attachment, commitment, and insight. Insight, attachment, and commitment. So in this image now, close your eyes, which we just discussed right now, the image of life and death. In that is dhikra, a reminder for ulul albab. Notice he did not talk about the fire here, the way he did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did when he spoke to the Bashar. because the Bashar it's our animalistic side, our basic species. Here he's talking to ulul albab, those of insight, those of love, of lub. So if you are of lub, your reminder would be looking around and seeing life and death and everything, how everything has a beginning and everything has an end. And the end is usually, if you are of the ulul albab, the end is welcome, because after that there's a new beginning. Here I should mention an ayah, which is Surah 6. And all of these surahs, by the way, which I just spoke about, they were all Meccan surahs. So the Meccan surahs are preparing people for what's to come, talking about life, talking about death, talking about those who don't believe in God. Remember, remember, remember. Once upon a time, you swore, you vowed, you bore witness, shahidna an la ilaha illallah. How can you forget now that la ilaha illallah? How can you set up idols, arbab, even lords, even important creations of yours to be equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How can you do that? Don't you remember? Don't you remember? It's in your genetic makeup. It's in your cellular makeup that you bore witness that la ilaha illallah. So here we have a warning now. Now this surah is a Madani surah, so you will see the warning in the Madani surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about a township. وَكَأَيٍّ مِّن قَرْيَةٍ عَتَتْ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهَا وَرُسُلِهِ. There's a qarya, there's a township, which did not pay attention to her Lord's command and his messengers. فَحَاسَبْنَاهَا حِسَابًا شَدِيدًا وَعَذَّبْنَاهَا عَذَابًا نُكْرًا. So we took her to account severely, and we gave her, this town, immense suffering. Now, what is this? This is a township that should have been remembering, or probably had Rasul there and forgot, despite the Rasul reminding it, the town. عَتَتْ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّهَا وَرُسُلِهِ. So this town had the Amr of Allah, his command, and the Rasul. But it did what? Atat, it's sort of like did not pay attention and actually transgressed. So what happened? This is what happened. Allah took this town to severe account and gave it severe suffering. And so she, meaning this town, tasted the outcome of what it had done, and the outcome was loss, total loss. فَذَاقَتْ وَبَالَ أَمْرِهَا وَكَانَ عَاقِبَةُ أَمْرِهَا خُسْرًا, total loss. أعد الله لهم عذابا شديدا فاتقوا الله يا أولي الألباب الذين آمنوا قد أنزل الله إليكم ذكرا. They had severe suffering. Therefore, اتقوا الله. Therefore, be aware of Allah. يا أولي الألباب. O you who have lub. So the first ayah was ذكرى لأولي الألباب. Here it says اتقوا الله يا أولي الألباب. Be aware of God, O people of commitment and insight. Awareness accompanies everything we do. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though those people are ulul albab, Allah is telling them to have what? To have awareness. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Oh, so you see, ulul albab who have faith and trust. Does that mean that there are ulul albab who might not have received the message? Because here it's talking about الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Amanu billah, meaning they probably had rusul, they had messengers. Does it mean that there are ulul albab who maybe did not get messengers? Yeah, Allahu a'lam. Fattaqullah, but you, O you ulul albab, who did receive messengers and did become mu'mineen. Fattaqullah ya ulul albab alladhina amanu. You see, it's not just any ulul albab. You who have become of the alladhina amanu. So you are today people who have received the message. Ittaqullah, be aware of God. قَدْ أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكُمْ ذِكْرًا. This is the dhikr, this is the reminder to you, O you who have lub and have iman. Do have taqwa, do have taqwa, do have awareness, and pay heed to this reminder. It's a reminder. So subhanallah, you see now, the Quran is amazing, but we have to really notice to whom Allah is speaking. He's speaking to everybody. But sometimes you, if you are a person of lub, you get something, which maybe somebody who is not yet a person of lub gets. If you're a person of iman, you get something, which maybe a person who doesn't have much iman yet does not get. So you see what I mean? The Quran is so rich, and your heart is veiled with so many veils that we need to take those veils off in order to understand the Quran. And they will come off when we are reading the Quran. Ahsan al-Hadith. It is the best of things that can ever be spoken or said. It's the Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وأقم الصلاة طرفي النهار وزلفا من الليل إن الحسنات يذهبن السيئات ذلك ذكرى للذاكرين. So here in this ayah, we have a dhikra, but not general either. It's a dhikra for the dhakirin. It's a dhikra for those who are already in remembrance. The dhikra for the dhakirin, meaning the reminder for the people of remembrance, is that they are establishing regular prayer during the day and parts of the night, because they know that the hasanat get rid of the sayyat. So what are they doing? They are doing hasanat as well. So this is constant communion. Al-dhakirin are the people who are in constant dhikr. What are they doing? They are praying and they are doing hasanat. And that is dhikra lil-dhakirin. The salah and the hasanat in themselves are dhikra lil-dhakirin. And I just want to ask you a question. When you see a person doing good deeds, whoever that person is, you look at that person, you say, MashaAllah, look at her. She's out there doing this, out there doing that, giving that, helping that. What do you say to yourself? MashaAllah, that's amazing. Now, isn't that a dhikra? That in itself is a dhikra. A person who does hasana is a dhikra to you, is a reminder to you to do the same and to be open to emulating. So as we are told, there's a saying, as-sahib, sahib. One is with a sad, one's with a sin, two different letters. But when we say it in Arabic, sometimes we cannot make the difference very obvious. As-sahib, sahib, meaning that the friend who is a companion, he is my sahib, he is sahib, meaning he pulls me. He pulls me to him to do what he's doing. So it's very dangerous to have a sahib who will be sahib you to something which is detrimental. Always choose your ashab to be yashabunik, to be pulling you towards that which is beneficial. So subhanallah, yani, there's a hadith I remember also about the friend of Rafiq al-Su, the friend of ill behavior, let's say, or who does things which are not good. He is like Hamil al-Kir. He is like the person who is cleaning fires. You might call him, like in your tradition, like a chimney sweeper or something, somebody who's does the dirtiest type of work. So what he does is there's no way but that you would get some of his soot on you. S-O-O-T, because that person is full of soot. So there's no way that friend of yours will not give you some of his soot. Whereas if you have a good friend, he is like Hamil al-Misk. He's like somebody who is carrying perfume. If he doesn't give you any of it, you will be enjoying the beautiful smell, and you will start, your scent will be of his scent, even if he doesn't give you any perfume. So friends are like that. Your companions are like that. Always choose the best of companions, because May Allah forgive us. Because sometimes we tend to think that being with certain people is cool, it's nice, it's so and so. Would you like to be with them on the day of judgment? Just ask yourself that. Would you like to be with them on the day of judgment? So you cannot choose your family, but you can choose your friends. Take care of your family and choose your friends. So we're talking about al-hasanat yudhibna as-sayyi'at. ذلك ذكرى للذاكرين. That's a reminder for those people who are of remembrance. They are dhakirin. They are people who oft mention, who oft remember God. Now, Salah, as we said, أقم الصلاة طرفي النهار. Salah is for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what it is for. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say to Musa alayhi salam in Surah Taha 20:14? He said, إنني لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني. It is I who am Allah. There is no other God besides me. So worship me. وأقم الصلاة لذكري. And establish communion in my remembrance. If you want to know why we establish communion, why we do the salah, it is not just as a ibadah that we have to do as a well, some people call it a farad, or some people call it an obligatory thing. It is also lidhikrillah. The salah is lidhikrillah. It is for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is why I speak to myself first and foremost, because I've been naughty. We must give our salah more attention. We must give our salah more attention. As in, what do I mean by attention? As in setting the scene to have the most presence in salah. Setting the scene to have the most presence and awareness in salah. Being in the an in our salah. Being there. And I speak to myself first before I speak to any of you. May Allah forgive me and forgive all of us. إنني أنا الله, he said. لا إله إلا أنا. فاعبدني. وأقم الصلاة لذكري. In another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us of a group of people. It's a large group of people. And it has all kinds of wonderful descriptions which we would like to have, that Allah would give us those, because they're all what? They're all titles. They're not, none of them are verbs. Like, remember what we said? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا is a verb. Those who have attained faith or are attaining faith. Whereas al-mu'mineen is a noun that they have actually what? Earned. So here we have an ayah which has, it's chock full of nouns. And for us, if any one of them is myself, I'm over the moon. I mean, subhanallah. Okay, so let's take a look at that ayah, which is a Madani ayah. It is Surah Al-Ahzab 33-35. إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات. So all these groups, the first is the group that earned the title of Muslimin. The second is the group, well, you see, actually, they're not even different groups. They could all be one group. It's just that they have earned those titles. Maybe one person has earned them all. Maybe one person has earned most of them. Allahu A'lam. Or each group has earned its title as the most, let's say, the most apparent, or the most, the highest, Anyway, so first one is the Muslimin. So, and the Muslimat, of course. So you have the men and women there. The second is the Mu'mineen. The third is the Qaniteen, like Sayyidina Maryam. She was Qanita. And Sayyidina Ibrahim, he was Qanit. Qunut is to be compliant. The Sabirin, the patient, the patiently persevering. the khashi'een, those in reverent awe. The khashi'een are those who are in awe, but they are in reverent awe, like so full of reverence to God that they are in awe. وَالْمُتَصَدِّقِينَ, those who are giving out of sidq, giving with sidq in their hearts. The sa'imin, those who are abstaining. So some people have explained this as not necessarily only food, but the proper abstention, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded, abstaining from everything which is detrimental. وَالْحَافِظِينَ فُرُوجَهُمْ وَالْحَافِظَاتِ, those who are protective of their vulnerabilities. وَالْحَافِظَاتِ, it's not just sexual here. It's you are protecting your vulnerabilities, all of them. وَالْحَافِظَاتِ وَالذَّاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَالذَّاكِرَاتِ. So here you have الذَّاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ. It's very specific that you are dhakir of Allah. And the dhakirat, what is the recompense? أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Now what I noticed here, Wallahu A'lam, in this ayah, is that it's mostly about abstention. It's mostly about abstention, meaning that they do no harm, and what they do is not necessarily witnessed as an act, it is more witnessed as their demeanor. It's as if, like, how can you witness a khashi'? You know what I mean? Somebody reverently in awe. How can you look at somebody and say, oh, he is reverently in awe? It's a feeling. You feel reverently in awe. You are in awe and reverence. It envelops you. You are feeling that. How can you say he is sadiq and witness that? What I mean is that those descriptions that Allah has mentioned here, He knows about, but we cannot really verify. It is He who knows them, and He who is giving those people those titles based on what He knows of them in their hearts, in their thoughts, in their spirits, in their actions, in everything. Inshallah, may we be among them. Just say Ameen. أَعَدَّ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةً وَأَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Allah has prepared for them forgiveness and a great, ample reward. There's a hadith that the Prophet, peace upon him, was asked, who of people who do jihad, which of them has the most reward? And the Prophet, peace upon him, said, أَكْثَرُهُمْ لِلَّهِ ذِكْرًا, the one who is most in remembrance of Allah. And then the person asked, what about those who are sa'imin? Who of the sa'imin, those who are abstaining or fasting, has the most ajr? He said, أَكْثَرُهُمْ لِلَّهِ ذِكْرًا. And the question went on and on about every single thing, about the zakah, about the hajj, about the sadaqah, and every single time the Prophet, peace upon him, would say, he would ask, who of the hajjaj is the most ajr? He would say, أَكْثَرُهُمْ لِلَّهِ ذِكْرًا. So I would like you today to place this in your daily life and say to yourself, who of the, let's say, mothers who is working for her family, who of the daughters who is working for her parents and trying to help them, who of the employees is working for better world or whatever you're doing, who of them is أكثر أجرا, who of them would get the most reward? Answer yourself and say, أكثرهم لله ذكرى, those who remember Allah the most. So today, let's take this with us. If we take nothing else, let's take this. Let's look around us at all our duties or whatever we're doing. Okay, let's say we're driving down the road. We say, of all the drivers driving down this road, which driver is getting the most ajr? And then answer yourself and say, أكثرهم لله ذكرى. أكثرهم لله ذكرى. And so what would that help you do? You will start saying Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar, and you start remembering Allah all the time. So if we take nothing today out of this talk except that, I think we would have taken quite a bit, inshallah. It is dangerous to be with people who are making fun or taking Allah's signs lightly. Okay, now what do you do then? That is shaitan. So what do you do? إذا رأيت الذين يخوضون في آياتنا فأعرض عنهم حتى يخوضوا في حديث غيره. If you see people messing about with our ayat, يخوضون doesn't mean messing about. يخوضون means entering it without, much care. So if you see them entering the subject of our signs, and could be the ayat of the Quran, could be other ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أعرض عنهم. What do? You leave them. You turn your back to them. حتى يخوضوا في حديث غيره. Until they enter into another discussion. Because you do not want to be part of a discussion which takes Allah's ayat light. وإما ينسينك الشيطان. Were the shaitan to happen to cause you to forget, فلا تقعد بعد الذكرى. See, you have the dhikr again. لا تقعد بعد الذكرى مع القوم الظالمين. These people are wrongdoers. They are ظالمين. They have خاضوا في آياتنا. They have entered into our ayat in a way they shouldn't have. Let's say you were with them and you did not pay attention of the need to leave. So you sat there with them. The shaitan made you forget. Once you remember, get up. لا تقعد بعد الذكرى مع القوم الظالمين, because then you would be of the ظالمين. So what do you have? You will have a dhikra which will remind you not to be there. Subhanallah. كلا إنها تذكرة فمن شاء ذكره. إنها the ayat تذكرة فمن شاء ذكره. في صحف مكرمة مرفوعة مطهرة بأيدي سفرة كرام بررة. This is Surah Abasa, Surah 80, Ayah 16. The Quran is a tadhkira. Taha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks to the messenger, peace upon him. He tells him, ما أنزلنا عليك القرآن لتشقى. The Quran is there not to make you feel bad or to give you any kind of trouble or misery, shaqa. Quran is not there for that. إلا تذكرة لمن يخشى. The Quran is there as a tadhkira, as a reminder for people of khashya. What's the khashya we said? Reverent awe. So the Quran is there for people of reverent awe, so that they would become what? They would remember. Tadhkiratan. It is a reminder for them. By the way, if the Quran is causing you shaqa, you don't know anything about it. The Quran should give you pleasure. It doesn't cause shaqa. It's a tadhkira. It brings you back to your true self. You have a self that is your true self, and the Quran takes you back there. نحن جعلناها تذكرة لنجعلها لهم تذكرة وإنه لتذكرة للمتقين. Remember we spoke about the Bashar, we spoke about the Alameen, we spoke about the Mu'mineen, we spoke about the Ulul Albab. Here it's a tadhkira for the muttaqeen, for the aware. It's a tadhkira for whoever wishes to follow the path, to pursue a path to his Lord. If your aim is your Lord, that's your direction on this path, the path of life. If your direction is towards your Lord on the path of life, this is the tadhkira which takes you there. Inna hadihi tadhkira, Surah 76, Ayah 31. Inna hadihi tadhkiratun faman sha'a attakhadha ila rabbihi sabila. This is a tadhkira for whoever wills to take a path, to pursue a path to his Lord. So this ayah, same ayah, it appears twice in the Quran actually, in Surah 76:31 and Surah 73:19. a beautiful detail here. We spoke about taqwa, right? So a beautiful detail here about taqwa. When we sacrifice an animal and give its whatever comes out of it to the poor. And why did I say whatever comes out of it? Because in Syria, we give everything or we use everything. Every single thing is used. There's nothing that goes to waste. So when you sacrifice an animal, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about that? He says in Surah Al-Hajj, Surah 22, Ayah 37, لَن يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا. Its flesh will not reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're giving it to the poor, right? You're doing it for God's sake, yes, but you're giving it to the poor. So Allah will not get any of that, of course. لَن يَنَالَ اللَّهَ لُحُومُهَا وَلَا دِمَاؤُهَا, nor the blood that you're spilling of it. None of that. وَلَكِنْ يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى مِنْكُمْ. To me, this ayah, that statement, يَنَالُهُ التَّقْوَى مِنْكُمْ, is amazing. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what on earth has the power to reach Allah? And of course, this is all figurative, but in His words. So I'm just using His words here. I don't know how, where, what, but I'm using His words. He has given something the honor to reach Him, even if by words. Allahu A'lam. I don't know how it's going to, just the reach. يناله. لن ينال الله لحومها ولا دماؤها ولكن يناله التقوى منكم. Neither its flesh nor its blood will reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but what will reach is the taqwa emanating from you. يناله التقوى منكم, meaning the taqwa emanating from you, the awareness emanating from you when you are sacrificing to give the poor. And here you can generalize the word sacrifice. We're not talking about maybe animals. Maybe we're not talking about blood. Maybe we're talking about something else. We're giving the poor something, and we're sacrificing something to give it to the poor. Nothing we give or sacrifice will reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What will reach Him is from within us, our awareness. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. كذلك سخرها لكم لتكبروا الله على ما هداكم وبشر المحسنين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it subservient to you, meaning those animals or whatever sacrifice you're giving. Why? لتكبروا الله على ما هداكم, so that you will glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what He has guided you. He guided you to do that. وبشر المحسنين, and give glad tidings to those who go beyond the call of duty in sacrificing to give the poor. Subhanallah, subhanallah. It's beautiful ayah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. These ayahs are speaking to the messenger. اتلو ما أوحي إليك من الكتاب. Recite the specific information, the wahi revealed to you of the compilation. وأقم الصلاة, and establish the communion. إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر ولذكر الله أكبر. The salah, what does it do? It forbids from the fahsha and the munkar, which are the pervasive atrocities, and the munkarat, which is mutually objectionable deeds. So the salah, it forbids. وَلَذِكْرُ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. And what is grander than that and greater than that, akbar, the greatest, is dhikrullah. وَلَذِكْرُ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. So the salah, as we mentioned, أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِ. So you have two different explanations of this beautiful ayah. One explanation tells you, just as we said before, أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِ. We're talking about salah, and the salah is established, the communion, to remember Allah in His remembrance. That's one meaning which we already spoke about. But listen to this. We have another meaning. And Ibn Abbas, actually. He said, do you know هل تدري ما قوله تعالى وذكر الله أكبر? Do you know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means when he says ذكر الله أكبر? And the speaker says, قلت نعم, yes, I do. And he said, what is it? I said, التسبيح والتحميد والتكبير في الصلاة وقراءة القرآن. You are doing the communion, but the dhikr Allah, but the mentioning Allah's name and the remembrance of Allah is the biggest thing, the hugest. Akbar means greatest. It's the greatest thing in your salah. And of course, it is. Why? Because Allah said, أقم الصلاة لذكري, and the greatest thing in your salah is the mentioning of Allah. But then we have this other meaning, as I said, and he was asking him, what do you see in this ayah? And he said that I see that. And he said, well, he sees something else, Ibn Abbas. So what does he see? He said, أي ذكر الله لكم بالثواب والثناء عليكم أكبر من ذكركم له في عبادتكم وصلواتكم. Subhanallah. That Allah's mentioning of you and Allah's remembering of you by the thawab, by the reward, and the thana, and the calling out your name with blessing. Akbar is bigger than your dhikr of your ibadah and your dhikr of Allah. Because Allah, what does he say? And of course, this tafsir is actually quite valid, because there's an ayah, Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, ayah 152, which says what? فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي وَلَا تَكْفُرُونَ. Mention me, I'll mention you. Remember me, I'll remember you. So, Dhikrullahi Akbar in this ayah means, it does mean that while I'm praying, the best thing I can do is Akbar, is mentioning Allah. But also, it also means that Allah's mentioning of me is the biggest, is the hugest, is the most magnificent thing. Allahu Akbar. If he mentions me, if he remembers me, it is much akbar bikathir. It is much grander, much greater than my mentioning of him.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين